Development Center. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Janet Fall with the Louisville Center, which is one of 10 centers throughout the Commonwealth, providing service to all 120 counties. If you're not familiar with the Small Business Development Centers, or SBDCs for short, then allow me just a moment to share what we do. So we provide assistance to entrepreneurs just like yourself, regardless of what point you are really in the life cycle of your business. So if you're just starting out, we can assist with market research, business plan development, and help you find startup capital. If you're an existing business, we can help in growing your business. So if you're looking to hire your first employee, maybe you need capital to expand your operations, or if you need help with cash flow, or at this point in time, maybe you're even looking to pivot your whole business, we have staff to help with that. And we're also available for assistance in the end of the life cycle of your business. So if you're looking to retire, maybe sell your business, we have folks who can help with that. Our professional staff, with their wide array of knowledge and experience in various industries, is here to provide a customized service to meet your particular business needs. So we do all this at no cost to you, thanks to the U.S. Small Business Administration, which co-sponsors our program. That program is then administered by the University of Kentucky, who partners with regional universities, community colleges, and even local economic development agencies. We're part of a national network, as you can see on your screen, America's SBDC, which means there's a small business development center to serve every county in the United States. To learn more about us, you can visit our website at kybizhelp.com. There you'll find additional resources to help start, fund, and grow your business. You'll also find the socials that we're on. So if you go to our website and find your favorite and connect, you can stay up to date on news, services, and also events like these. To request personal assistance, you can email us at info@kybizhelp.com or call 1-888-475-7232. So recording of today's webinar will be emailed to you later this afternoon. So if you have trouble with audio or you just need to step away, know that you're going to have access to the entire recording later on today. Moderating today's event, just like every Wednesday, are my fellow staff from the Louisville Center, Dave Etkin, the Center Director, and Tony Sears, our Assistant Center Director. Good Wednesday afternoon, everyone.
Hello, Janet. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Tony?
Hi, Janet. How are you, Janet?
Hi, it's nice and hot.
Hey, Dave. How are you doing? You doing okay?
Good. Yes, ma'am. Doing great. So I'm really excited about today's session because we have a great guest today. I've worked with Linda a number of times on different programs, and I know two CEOs that are just as the two toughest that I know. Linda's one of them. She's been a CEO of a $100 million a year international company. She's seen a bunch of problems. She's dug through and been very successful. She's also started her own companies, Executing, which is a strategic planning consultancy, as also Whiskey Chicks with Whiskey Chicks here in Louisville that you may have heard of. So Linda brings a wealth of knowledge, and I'm really excited to talk about today because the world has changed with business owners, and it's very important to, I think, to look at these kind of crises and change as not as a problem, but as an opportunity to make good changes in your business to make better as you go forward. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Linda. Let's just get going here. And as always, get on the chat, ask your questions. We'll be here after the session to kind of answer as many questions as you can, provide resources. So make sure you jump on the chat and let us know what's on your mind, and we'll get those things answered for you too. So with that, I'd like to introduce Linda. Linda, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Dave, and it's always a pleasure to partner with you on things like this. You always bring a good crowd, and I have no doubt that today is we've got some great business owners out there that are anxious to kind of figure out how to get out of the weeds. So I'm just going to go ahead and start the presentation, if that's all right.
Let's do it.
So, Dave reached out to me a few weeks ago asking to see if there was some content or topics that would be relevant to what's going on today for small business owners. And the more we got to talking, and I asked him, several questions, and some of the biggest things, or one of the biggest things that business owners are facing right now is, everybody's watching every dime that they have. In some cases, they've had to lay off people. They've had to put people on furlough. And as much as the PPP loans have helped, money's just not there to be able to keep people on full time. So the result ends up being that the business owner is the one that's getting completely involved in the business and, kind of getting deep into the weeds. And so one of the things that we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about how do you get out of the weeds. And, having been a former CEO, I know how difficult it can be, especially when crisis is going on, because, there's concerns that you might be the only one who can do this. And it's something that, we all think we're the only ones that can do it. And or we don't want to burden our employees because they've got a lot of stress going on. But what ends up happening is sometimes we end up causing additional stress for our employees and additional stress for ourselves. So, one of the things that I like to talk about when it comes to when I work with clients is we like to call it how do you want to achieve total world domination? And total world domination is really about what you want to achieve out of your life. And that means both personally and professionally. And so sometimes when we own a business, we get so focused in on what we're doing professionally that we forget to step back and think about what else do we have going on in our life. And so one of the things that, is always good to do is just stop for a moment and kind of start to envision what your future looks like. And so before we get digging too deep into what it is that you do to make your life easier, it's always important to kind of take inventory of where you are today. So one of the things I'm going to ask you to do for just a minute is just answer one question to, answer for yourself. If nothing was holding you back, in 5 years, I would love to what? So take just a minute and think about that. In 5 years, if you were having a conversation with yourself 5 years from now, what would it look like and how for you to be really excited about where you achieved in 5 years? For many of us, that answer to that question has changed dramatically over the last few months. I know it has for me. I was actually, I had started working on doing a speaking career at the beginning of this year. So I was, starting to get very involved in the National Speakers Association, was starting to book events, and I actually had several events booked for this year. And so it was an exciting time for me being able to get out there and do that. But then all of a sudden it came to a screeching halt when there were no more conventions and meetings and in-person events. And so I quickly had to pivot and rethink about what I was doing. So if I had asked myself at the beginning of the year where I wanted to be in 5 years, it's a very different answer than what it is today. And for some of you, and depending on the type of business you're in, your world has either gotten tremendously busy or have slowed down dramatically. And both of those come with each, they have a different set of issues. And for some of us, it's been an opportunity to kind of stop for a moment and ponder what direction you take in your career, your business, or in life. I'm a true believer that, even during tough days, that you've got to stop and you got to think about where you're going and discover and realize that you all have it in you to get to where you want to be. And some of it is you just got to start to think strategically and look at things a little bit differently than the way it was previously. So real quickly, and I'm not going to spend much time on this because Dave did such a great job giving an introduction. I kind of like to say, I like to be your tour guide on your path to total world domination. As Dave mentioned, I act as a strategic advisor to business owners. I am a CEO mentor, and I'm an exit planner. So when you talk about pivoting, one of the big things I did earlier this year was to pursue my certification as an exit planning advisor. Now, what does that mean? That means that I work with business owners, small to medium-sized business owners, to help them plan for their eventual exit. It doesn't mean that they're going to exit tomorrow. It doesn't mean they're going to exit next year. In many cases, the best time to start exit planning is 5 years ahead of time. And through that process, working with business owners to figure out how do you increase the value of your business. So some of the things I'm going to talk about today is really centered around how do you increase that value, but also how do you make your life easier when it comes to running a business. The one thing that I like to do when it comes to helping business owners is take a synchronized approach. You know, that it's all about balancing your personal, your financial, and your business goals. And, you know, a lot of times that process is missing is the personal side. You know, it's a really interesting research that says that after 1 year, 3 out of 4 business owners profoundly regret selling their business. And the reason is because they've given little or no thought to what it's going to do to them afterwards, like what happens to me afterwards. And they're not planning properly for their future and their next chapter. So I like to work with financial advisors, insurance brokers, attorneys, CPAs, and help them with the business owner clients that they have, helping them figure out what is the right thing and helping fill in that goal, that gap between your personal, financial, and business goals. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening with you guys today. I know for many, it feels probably since March when things started to close down that you've been on a roller coaster ride. And if you're like me, that roller coaster ride has caused me to have challenges when it comes to focusing on different things. I have days when I'm just right on and I'm moving forward and focused on the business. And then there's other days that, you know, the craziness in the world becomes a huge distraction and makes it really difficult for me to focus on the things that I really need to. You know, to add to that, sometimes as a business owner, when you're in situations like this, you know, your workload starts to change. And in this pandemic, it's forced many of you back to get into the weeds of your business. You know, once again, you're taking tasks on that maybe you haven't done in years. And, you know, maybe because you've laid off some of those frontline staff or employees have gotten sick or they're actually having to care for someone in need. You know, there are pros and cons to being on the front line, and it can bring you a whole new appreciation of what it takes to service your client, how to take care of your suppliers, and how you take care of your other team members. Now, for some business owners, you've been on the front line for a long time, and you're used to doing that. So, but there's also other things now that you have to worry about. Let's take the PPP loans. You know, you have to fill out the paperwork. You got to go through all of the rigmarole to get that done. And so it's added new tasks to your plate. And so many times we're all feeling overwhelmed. You know, long-term staying on the front line as a business owner, it's neither healthy for you or for your business. You know, it can lead to a lot of burnout, and your business is actually less valuable when you're doing all the work. And it's probably one of the biggest influencers when it comes to the value of your business at the time that you want to exit. So now's a great time to kind of look at how do you retool a company so that it can start running without you again, or really just start running without you because everything's dependent upon you since you started the business. So there's 3 things that we're going to talk about today. And it's about, first of all, it's gaining control of your business and feeling confident about the future and ways to increase the value of the business. The first thing is simplify. You know, I recently spoke to an entrepreneur who was so excited to share that they had added a whole new line of business during COVID. And it really did sound like a great opportunity. But when we started to dig a little deeper, you know, this new type of work had nothing to do with what they were currently doing. You know, they had little or no experience in the area. It wasn't something they could cross-sell or upsell to their current customers. And the cost to serve was much higher than the core products offerings that they had in place. You know, the big question we started to explore was this a good or a bad decision? And the answer is maybe, maybe not. But the one thing that we talked about is that you can't be 2 places at once. And to be successful in both businesses, neither one can rely on completely on this individual. You know, I've ran 2 businesses, and one of the things that I've had to do in the last year is really take a shift in where I'm focusing a lot of my energy. I had to work to find people who could take the lead on Whiskey Chicks that didn't require me to be at each and every event, that didn't require me to plan each and every event. And that took a lot of work and a lot of discipline to do that. I have certain standards by which I want things done. And so it was really difficult for me to relinquish control. But I knew that the only way that I could grow this business, Execuity, I had to give things up on the other side. And so, a lot of us that are natural born entrepreneurs is that you think you can juggle everything, and being busy is the way to know whether you're being successful. The second thing we're going to talk about is how to clarify. Sometimes, we need to provide clarity on what it is that you do. Have you ever in your business, I know I've said it, it's just easier for me to do it myself. You got to ask yourself, why is that? Is it because the person who wants to help is incompetent? Or is it because it takes time to teach someone how you do it and it doesn't feel like a priority for you at the moment? The same situation keeps repeating itself, and we begin to think about what we're going to start to do is begin to think about, in your portfolio of products and services, what are those things that are really teachable? Which things are the most valuable, and which things are repeatable, so that you can prioritize what's making the most sense for you to invest your time in as the owner and the leader of the business. The last thing we're going to look at are areas within your business that are easy to outsource. So many business owners, including myself, will focus on tasks that I can save money without realizing how much time it really takes and distraction that it has to my core business. I've lost fully days by getting on Canva. Canva has been one of the best and worst things in my life. And if you're not familiar with it, it's a whole graphic design package out there that makes it really easy to create your presentations and design work and all that kind of stuff. But, I can get into there and think I'm only in there for about an hour and realize that I've been sitting in there for 4 hours tweaking a little design that, had I spent and given it to a designer, it would have cost me a lot less than the value of the time I spent doing it. You can gain time back by focusing on what you're good at and outsourcing the rest. So let's go a little bit deeper into each one of these. So I like this. One of the things is that it took time, but we put together a strategy to move all of our clients except, cough in my lungs. So how many doors in your business can a customer walk through in your business? It's not uncommon, particularly for mature businesses, to have multiple lines of business and customize offerings. One of the questions I ask up front is, tell me a little bit about the services that you provide. Is it customized for every customer? How much of it is consistent between customer to customer? We always want to make our customers feel special. So we never want them to feel like they're getting a commodity product or service. But sometimes we let them choose everything, and if you're looking at doors as an example, it could mean not just the design of the door, but it can mean everything, including the door handle, the type of wood, the glass, even maybe the type of nails that you use, or the plane that you're going to use to level it out when you install it. When it gets this complex, it becomes less scalable. And sometimes this is when most companies become too dependent on their owner. Whereas the master of your company and your business and of the customer experience, we feel like everything needs our own personal special touch. And, when you have a large breadth of offerings, it's hard to find and train employees they're going to deliver at the level that you expect them to do. The secret to part of this is to pick things that make you unique and focus on finding more customers, not more things to sell. So share with you a little story. When I was a leader at Accent Marketing across the river, which is no longer there, it got bought out by a large company. We wanted to be everything to everybody. We took a lot of pride in what we called our can-do spirit. It was one of our greatest assets, but it was also one of our biggest, it was our Achilles heel. In our business, we had a concentration problem where 60% of our business is made up of one client. The bigger challenge was that only 25% of our overhead, meaning all of the other leaders in the business, were dedicated to the account. And what that meant is that 75% of our resources went to support only 40% of our revenue. And the reason for that is because everything was customized for those other clients. Now, what we delivered was similar service to each one, and our systems and processes, but our systems and processes were all customized. You know, when we'd add a new client, implementation was so long, resources were high, and support costs grew. And one of the things, in order for us to survive and scale and grow, we had to focus on simplifying things without diluting our value proposition. You know, it took time, but we put together a strategy to move all the clients, except our biggest, over to one consistent platform. We standardized the things that we could standardize. For instance, training, quality control. We actually standardized our onboarding process so that it could be faster. And then what the end result was, our clients were less overwhelmed because we led them down a consistent path, and it made it much easier for them to onboard. So if you've ever built a house, you can relate to this, that when you build a house, you know, you've got this set budget that the builder has set aside, but a lot of times the builder doesn't give you much guidance on what are those things that you get to choose from. And they open it up, like going to the plumber the first time when we were building a house was so overwhelming because there are way too many choices. And by narrowing those choices down, you can make the customer experience far more pleasant. And they can end up, and the programs themselves can actually be far more successful. You know, we went from this to this, to where there was some variance and there was some flexibility, but the process by which you went through looked only slightly different. And when you went behind the doors, you were drawn and following a very similar path. So one of the things I want you to do, and we're going to take a few minutes to do an exercise, and we're going to I believe we're going to put a link out there in the chat for you to get to this spreadsheet or this PDF. The other thing is, if you can't get to it, don't worry about it. Just take a moment, and I want you to begin to think about what are the products and services that you offer now. Don't worry about the other columns just yet, but take a minute and list down the top 3, 4, 5 products and services that you're offering today. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I want you to think about, of these products and services, which ones are the most teachable? Now, what you're going to do is you want to rate each item using a scale of 1 to 5. And it's going to be about how teachable is that product or service. For example, if it takes significant technical training and years of experience to be able to provide that product and services, you'd actually rate it pretty low. It's probably going to be a 1 or 2. But if it's something that's easy to do and easy to comprehend, then it would receive a much higher score. So take just a second and think about that on your products and services. What's teachable? Now we're going to do the same thing in the next column, which is what's most valuable. You know, when you look at this product or service, how valuable is it to your business? And you're going to look at it 2 ways. How valuable is it to your business is it a top money maker? And I also like to remind you that a top money maker doesn't mean it's the most profitable. So make sure you're looking at the products that are most profitable for you. And is it a product or service that's valuable to your customers and is something that they gravitate towards? If it is, then you're going to want to rate it higher. If it's not something, if it's hard to sell, or it's hard for them to see the value, or it's really hard for you to service, then you're going to want to rate it a little bit lower. And then in the last column, is it repeatable? Will the customer buy it from you more than once? Is it something that's easy to sell to another customer once it's set up? Now, what you want to do, and I don't expect you to fill this all out right now, but it's an exercise you can do after this webinar, which is add up the scores across the page, and it should start to become clear what products and services you want to focus your time on. The higher the score, the bigger investment you want to make on trying to get that product and service standardized and in your business and make it something that is more core to your business. Because if you're getting low scores on all the products and services that you have, your business isn't going to be as scalable as you'd like it to be. And from a value standpoint, it's not going to garner a high value because it says that a lot of this stuff is very reliant on the business owner. So something for you to do as you kind of continue on. And like I said, there is a link to the PDF that's available out there for you to download and take a look at. So let's talk about the other piece, which is gaining clarity. You know, systemizing it. You know, I had a boss one time whose favorite phrase was, "What does done look like?" And if expectations are unclear, then the outcomes are less likely to meet your expectations. And it can also be extremely frustrating for the person that's doing the work, as well as frustrating for you when it's not done right. And a lot of times that comes back to the fact that the person does not understand what done looks like. You know, the only way people are going to learn is if you take the time to teach them. You need to show them what you want, and more importantly, how you want it. A lot of times, and I know I'm very guilty of this because I tend to just go straight. You know, I've had people point out to me that sometimes I'm down the street, around the corner before they've even gotten their shoes on. And so I have to be mindful to step back, and as I'm teaching things, to stop and pause and make sure people understand not only what it is, the concept I'm teaching, but how it is that I want them to deliver that, particularly when it comes to service for clients. And it's important to remember that there's several different learning styles, and the best way to ensure it's done properly is to show them and let them do it with your support and guidance. It's not just do this, it's about showing them and guiding them. So how do you do that? So one of the things that, you know, at one point in my career, I was responsible for running one call center, and it was our first customer care center in our business. And we began to grow, and I was asked to take on multiple locations. Well, keep in mind, I hadn't really managed anything more than that business. Now, granted, we had about 200 seats and about 300 employees at the time over in New Albany. And but we were starting to grow, and we were going to add multiple locations. So I had to really figure out, how do I start to manage other locations and get them performing the way that we were able to get our first call center up and going. And, you know, I knew how to do it when I was there in person, but I had to figure out how to monitor and manage sites that I wasn't going to be in physically every day. Now, I'm going to be the first one to admit I didn't get it right up front. It was through a lot of trial and error to try to figure it out. You know, I had to step back and do the work to outline my expectations. I couldn't just assume, we know what that word means, that everybody out in the field was going to get it. So what I started to do is I began to list it out, the different important parts of running a call center from my point of view. It took time. It took a lot of effort. I worked with my site leaders in helping to standardize the operations and to actually create the criteria for what it meant to run our sites and to be compliant against the expectations we set. And we began to articulate, what does done look like when it came to running a site. Expectations, we made sure were very clear. And we actually put together a evaluation method for each of the center managers and for new managers coming on board, so they knew what was clearly expected. We actually took a rating scale of 1 to 5, and we clearly articulated, this is what it takes to be a 5, and this is what it takes to be a 4. This is what it takes to be a 3, a 2, and a 1. So that when we came, and it didn't have to be me, it could be one of my other leaders going into that location and being able to clearly inspect and say, did you meet this criteria, or did you not? And what it also did is it served a guideline for my managers on how we wanted the sites to be ran. And what ended up happening was the managers became more confident in their jobs, and they started to begin to really adhere to this and became strong mentors to new managers that came on board. Now, where this really came into play, there was a point in my career when we had to open 3 new locations in 6 months. Now, put that into relative terms. Each location takes about 8 to 12 weeks just to even to design and start to get ready for occupancy. We also had to hire in each one of these locations about 400 employees each in order for us to service the client that we had. And the only way we were able to do that is because we had prepared our frontline managers to be able to go into these new locations and get people up on board in the way that we wanted it to be done. We wanted to make sure that the culture that we had created was going to be carried on into these multiple locations. And what it allowed us to be is more confident in our ability to execute on our commitments, both to our brand and our culture, but most importantly to our clients. And we were actually able to get all 3 locations operating at the same quality of our existing sites within 90 days of operation, which if anybody's ever worked in the customer care industry is very difficult to do over 6 months, let alone over 90 days. But that all came from that proper planning ahead so that we were ready to scale and grow when the time came. So the next thing for us to think about once you figure out how you're going to clarify is, do what you do best and outsource the rest. I know a lot of times that we are, as a business, are sometimes hesitant to spend money. And especially during tough times like this, we start cutting back on the very resources that are keeping us going. And that you may be saving money, but in the end, it may be costing you more than you actually realize, particularly if it's taken away from the things that you really need to be focused on. If you're the one, you let go of your cleaning service, for instance, and you have to be the one cleaning the office, it's going to take away from your ability to bring on new clients or take care of an employee. It's going to sound a little bit, that may sound a little, I like to call it highfalutin, but, I've had someone cleaning my house twice a month for more years than I'd like to account. And it started several years ago, even before I was married. I used to travel extensively and I had little time to keep my apartment clean. And so it was something that when I was traveling, it was almost like this pleasant thing, like almost a gift I would open up my house to, and my house would be clean. And it gave me this great feeling. So, keep in mind, I worked at the same company for 19 years, but when I left there, we were still trying to figure out what was going on with my career and where we were going. And so financially, we were looking at what are the things we need to give up. But I will tell you the one thing, and it was so funny in my conversations with my husband, I made it clear that, other things to give up, that was the one thing I did not want to give up, even if it meant I had roots showing in my hair, my nails weren't done, which I actually gave that up. I didn't get haircuts as often. We didn't go out to dinner. We didn't do those other things or other luxuries. Because here's the one thing, I was born with many talents, but cleaning is not one of them. I've never been able to figure out how to get everything looking perfect and clean and spotless. I can make things look straight and they can look neat, but I'm not very good at cleaning. So I know my strengths and I know my weaknesses. And for me, it was more than just having a clean house. It was also about having the time to spend with my husband and my kids. It was about avoiding those arguments over who has to clean out the toilet. It's also meant that I had more time available to focus on my business. And so by spending what some may perceive as something frivolous in my life, it actually was something that has a very clear ROI for me when it comes to my time. And so there are things in your business that may look frivolous to pay for, and things that maybe you've given up over the past few months that have a cost, but their cost may be more than you think, and it can be a cost to your time. And it may also be pushing you and causing additional stress for you that if you were able to outsource that, it would possibly relieve a lot of stress in your life. And in the end, your business is operating more effectively and efficiently. So just a couple things to think about for a lot of businesses that you have the ability to outsource, and that sometimes it's worth taking and investing in it, and in the end can be much cheaper. Is one of the things that there's services out there is a fractional CFO. Now what that is a little bit more than someone doing bookkeeping and accounting for you. A fractional CFO can be somebody who helps you look at your business strategically from a profit standpoint and from a product standpoint and around expenses and those type of things. Sometimes by working with a fractional CFO, you're able to discover things in your business that you didn't realize were costing you more than you ever thought. You know, one of the more classic areas, which I always encourage small businesses to really invest in finding a great HR partner, because when you're small, you can't afford a full-time HR person, at least most can't. But there's a lot of compliance issues that, you know, I could tell you horror stories, but it would take a whole nother 40 minutes to go through them, about people that cut back on their HR and they cut back on their recruitment and their training in order to save money. In the end, it costs them far more than it would have cost to have a good professional working with you on it. You know, for myself, you know, having a virtual assistant, and it's a lot cheaper than you would expect it to be, a virtual assistant. You can have somebody that may only work for you for a couple days a week, but are able to keep your calendar in check, maybe even be able to sort through that pile of email that you have. It's always worth exploring. Marketing and social media. This is one of those areas that, you know, for my business, a big key part of it is keeping a presence out there and building my own personal brand, which takes a lot of time and takes a lot of effort. And what I've discovered, my time is better spent creating the content such as this than it is to do all the marketing and promotion. And so by handling and finding somebody to partner with, I'm actually able to increase my business and the efficiency of my business, because I'm able to focus on the things that I like to do and the things that I'm good at. And lastly, IT services. You know what? It takes a lot to get a lot of your systems and things in place. And you can hire a full-time IT person. You can have someone on your staff play IT person. But sometimes it's worth it to find a good partner who can help you at least get you set up in the beginning to make sure, one, depending on the type of business, that you're setting up a secure environment, which nowadays is even more critical than it ever was. Can also make sure that you're set up in the way that allows your employees to go remote more easier than what it is now. And can help you think strategically about how your business can operate by using technology. Always a great way to invest your time. So, you know, with that, you know, and coming back full circle is, you know, at the end of the day, you want to get your life back. You also want to increase the value of your business as you're doing it. So the best way to do that is to simplify. Focus those things that are teachable, valuable, and repeatable, and take the time to identify what those things are. The other thing is define what done looks like and set clear expectations for the players that are on your team. That way you won't be disappointed, and frankly, they're going to be less frustrated with their job when they actually feel like they're doing their job right and that you really do appreciate what they're bringing to the role. And lastly, look at things within your business that you can outsource and focus on the things that you do best and then outsource the rest. So with that, just really want to throw out there to you that, and we'll open it up for questions, but one of the things that I want to throw out there for each one of the people on this phone is that there are a couple complimentary tools and content that I'm offering up to you guys today, which is one, that a lot of businesses have no idea what their business is worth. You have no idea what the value is. And so I'm offering up to everyone on this phone call a free assessment of their business value. There is a link on our website that you can follow, and by filling out that form, and it only takes about 15 minutes to fill out, it'll give a good idea of where you're at right now and give you some ideas of some of the areas you might want to focus on in order for you to increase the value of your business. There's also a free download of the book Famous or Rich, and it's a great short read to kind of go through and get your mind thinking about, are you better off being famous or rich? And what are the differences between those, particularly when you're building the strategy for your business? So I'm going to leave up here the contact information for our business, and feel free to reach out to me anytime. I will always give, you know, at least 30, 45 minutes of my time to any business out there just to see if I can help get them in the right path, or just even provide them some free advice on what they can do to increase the value of their business. So with that, I guess I'll open it up for questions if we have any.
That was great, Linda. So what, you and I are both certified exit planners, and I think that'd be interesting if you would talk a little bit more about the idea of de-risking your business and why that makes a business more valuable.
So de-risking your business is really important, and there's a lot of things that comes to de-risking your business. One, there are compliance issues that you want to be aware of. There are things with regard to safety and security, depending on the type of business you're in. And, just to step back for a minute, and you look about exit planning and just even think about what that is when it's looking at exit planning, first of all, most business owners don't know what their options are. There are more than just one option of selling your business to someone else. There's also options that go beyond just passing it on to the next generation. There are several different ways that you can start to get money out of the business that you've invested all of your time and efforts in for the last several years. But in that, you got to start thinking like an investor, and where an investor might spend their money. And when an investor comes in to look at a business, they're looking at they're placing a bet, and they're placing a bet on the future earnings of that business. And those future earnings are going to be dependent upon a lot of things. And one of those, as you mentioned, is around what level of risk am I taking on when I come and buy this business? And if you've got a business that hasn't gone through the process of getting a really good employee handbook in place, or maybe you've not defined your OSHA requirements, you're not hitting the things from a security compliance when it comes to customer data. It may mean that you may not have the right insurance in place if something was to happen. One of the biggest things out there that a lot of business owners don't think about is what I call key man life insurance. And it's around a business owner that says, if something happens to you tomorrow, and this business is completely dependent upon you, what happens to the value of your business? And if it's so dependent upon you, then you may be thinking you're leaving your spouse or your family members with this nest egg that you built that may be generating a couple $1 million worth of revenue. But the fact that you're not there, it's not worth anything anymore. Or they may not be able to cover the debt that you've accumulated over that period of time. And you have to look at your business and look at those risk factors and identify there are methods and there are tools out there and there are policies that you can get that can protect you, that can protect the estate, can protect your family, that you need to think about, which is another form of de-risking your business.
Awesome. While you're not speaking, you might want to mute a little bit. I think that'll take care of that feedback we're getting. So on your sheet, I have a question about the teachable portion of it. Maybe you could explain a little bit more what that means and how you kind of solve for that issue. Once you decide when you're working through your worksheet.
So one of the big things is that for a lot of business, a lot of entrepreneurs, you built your business based upon what your strengths are. And a lot of the things that your business are built upon is the fact that you may be experienced in a certain area. You're a good tradesman. Let's take, for instance, an HVAC business. You went into it because you went through the proper training and everything with regard to an HVAC business. There's actually one client I'm talking to right now who is an HVAC operator. And more importantly, what he brings to the table is this engineering of big industrial HVAC. And what he can do when he's stepping back and we're looking at his business from a long-term standpoint around how do you scale this or how do you increase the value of this business is he has to begin to identify people or start to train people on how to do the engineering he does on the HVAC. So he can find HVAC people that know how to do HVAC, but this engineering component is a whole level of expertise in his business. Now, it's the area where he makes a lot of his money. But at the end of the day, for that business to have a lot of value, he has to figure out what can he teach and what can he not. And when it comes to the, weighing that out on the valuable side of it is very high, but the repeatable number is very low and the teachable number is very low. So as he's looking to grow his business, it's trying to figure out, can you overcome those challenges or not and get them up to the point where they are teachable and repeatable? Or is there another way you can take what you're doing and make it more teachable, make it more repeatable, so that you're not having to recreate the wheel every time, and it doesn't require you to re-engineer everything for yourself at that one, for that particular customer. And it's a hard thing for a lot of business owners to do, because for a lot of people, the value proposition is what you bring to the table. I'm running into it myself and figuring out, how do I scale and grow what it is that I'm doing now? And because right now it's very dependent upon me, but it's, how do I start to bring other executives? How do I bring other people that are experienced and show them the methods by which I want to teach business owners to do this, and trying to create things that are teachable, that are repeatable, and that are valuable to potential clients out there.
I know you're a fan of John Warlow, and you're working with his stuff, but so am I. And he has this idea of taking a service and turning it into a subscription model, so you have recurring revenue. Do you have any tips for the folks out there to talk about and to think how they could think through looking at their service and maybe turning it into a subscription model?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're talking about here is that a lot of times for many businesses, it's a one-time purchase, or maybe it's a once every 3 years or every 5-year purchase. And I'll take the refrigeration business as an example. A refrigeration manufacturer, and GE was fantastic about this. And why I know so much about it is this was what Accent was founded upon, was this whole concept of repeatable revenue coming out of selling a refrigerator. So if you think about it, a refrigerator is something that somebody buys once, hopefully every 15 years. You don't have to buy it every 5 or 10, even though it feels like it now that you have to buy them every 5 or 10 years. But one of the things that the refrigerating industry did was actually start to figure out, how do I still stay connected to that customer that bought my refrigerator and continue that relationship and continue to get revenue from that relationship. So they did 2 things. One is, a lot of refrigerators, when you get them, they have the ice makers and they have the water thing on the front, but they have filters that you need for them. And so what they've done is created subscription-based relationship with that customer to sign up, and we're going to ship you a filter every 3 months so that you can make sure that everything on your refrigerator is fresh and clean. They also created service contracts. That was another revenue stream coming in, but it became an automatic renewal service contract, so that they had annual revenue coming in related to that refrigerator that they never had before. And it's just an example of how you can look at your business differently and step back and see, what is it that this customer needs that's aligned to what I'm doing, that I can package up, or that I can put in a repeatable format. One of the examples John likes to share is about an elevator company in New York, who they made their money about installing elevators. Well, when 9/11 hit, everything came to a screeching halt, similar to what a lot of businesses are experiencing today. But this one elevator company decided they just shifted their model, and they still did installations, but what they created a maintenance program for them. And they ended up going to the buildings that they did work in, and said, you know what, I know you don't want to install something new, but let me tell you, here's the regular maintenance that needs to happen. And I'm going to put together this maintenance program that basically, for, $100 a month or $50 a month, I'll come back in every month and inspect what's going on with your elevator. And in turn, over the years since 9/11, they've become one of the biggest elevator servicing companies in New York. And they do less installation, but instead have now controllable, predictable revenue that they never had before, and are able to weather the storms like you have today, because they have this recurring revenue stream in place.
Nice. Try to mute yourself there for a second there, Linda. So the other CEO I mentioned earlier, he also is CEO of over $100 million a year company. And here's an argument that he and I have a lot. The difference between focusing on process or focusing on goals. And I know there's a couple different schools of thought on this. And I know it's a little bit off topic, but it's kind of in with what we're talking about here today. But when you're trying to kind of tool your business in that, what's your thoughts on setting yourself goals or digging into process and using that as a lead up to achieve a goal?
That's a great question. I never really thought about it that way. I guess my first answer is, so if I've got a company that's all about achieving total world domination, and I believe up front you got to set the goal of where you want to go, then I would prioritize the goals before I get into the process. And because I feel like you've got to have a destination in mind of where you want to go. And once you have that destination in mind, then you can go back and start to create the process around how you're going to get there, and identifying what are the tactics and the measures that are most important at that point in time that are going to move you further down the field. It's just, and by the way, I'm bad at sports analogies, so if I get this really bad, just you can make fun of me later. But it's like football, right? Which is, yes, at the end of the game, the goal is to win the game, right? But for a coach, they're all about the moves at each point in time. And they have different people on their team that are responsible for certain moves within the team, whether it's defense or offense. But they're making one move at a time with the end goal in mind. And I think it's real important for businesses to think about what that end goal is, but you have to make one play at a time. But I will caveat that with, but when you make that one play at a time, you actually need to be thinking 2 or 3 moves ahead. Because if you make that one play and you're not thinking about your next play, then you're not prepared to move forward. You're probably going to get the ball taken away from you. Mm-hmm. Well, I actually did that pretty well for a football analogy.
You would have done better than me because I know nothing about football.
You're the second person I had that conversation with this week. I guess I got to change my analogies.
Tony, I'm sorry I'm hogging all the questions. Do you have any questions that we need to get to out there?
No, right at this point we don't, but I did want to tell you took my thunder. I was going to ask her more about that scalability document. That's an awesome document, by the way.
Yeah,
thank you.
Definitely is.
That's one of the tools that we've got in our tool set to kind of help business owners increase the value of their business. And it does take time to go through those things. And there's different strategies that really are as simple as that. But you just have to take the time to step out and work on your business versus in your business. And I know the SBA is a great resource for business owners to help them work on their business. And, the one thing I can never encourage enough is that you have to take that time to work on your business. And most importantly, when you're talking about times like we're facing today, you really, really have to focus on your business. And, even when things around you seem like you're in a whirlwind and right in the middle of a tornado, you have to stop for a minute just to consider where you are so that you are able to survive it in the end.
When you and I were doing those level up programs, you kind of made the statement, I'm going to paraphrase, about, all sales are not good sales. And I know this sheet kind of focuses on some of your sales processes, but are there ways to test your assumptions, once you kind of do your analysis on your worksheet and to, make sure you're going down the right path so you don't waste a lot of time? I think I recall we had that discussion at some point. Those other programs.
Yeah, actually do a separate revenue on is all revenue good revenue, or a separate webinar on it. And the key to part of that, and that is part of the process, is going through that teachable, scalable, and teachable, repeatable, and valuable. Not all revenue is good revenue. When I say that is, one of my more quotes I use more often, which is growth can be, success can be sometimes scarier than failure. And, there's probably a few businesses on here that are actually doing really well during all of this stuff because it's changed their business. It's opened up some new clients and opened up new opportunities. But sometimes people get so enthralled with the revenue number that they forget that more revenue does not always mean more to the bottom line. Particularly if you don't step back and understand what all it's going to do and the cost to serve that revenue. I share an example that, we had our biggest client who came to us, and, I shared the example of building 3 centers. Well, those 3 centers were all for one client who was already taking up, 50, 60% of our business. And, we got so enthralled with this number. I mean, it literally grew our business by, 30, 40%, which was great. But at the same time, now we increased our concentration with that one client, like significantly. So the risk to our business was far greater. We put, it was literally putting all eggs in one basket. And when things started to go wrong with that customer, it really had a huge impact. And what went wrong was nothing more than similar to what we have today. When 2008 hit and the economy began to drop, their business began to drop off. And guess what? Our business began to drop off. And we were forced to close sites. And we had invested a ton of money. We also underestimated the return on, or we overestimated the return on investment. Once again, we got dazzled by those numbers of millions of dollars and not realizing that it was going to take us longer than we thought to get that money back. And our contracts weren't tight enough to protect us. And the bigger your client is, the harder it is to get those contracts in place to protect you because they have all the negotiating power and you've lost yours. So it's just something to consider when you're looking at the revenue. What truly is the ripple effects of that new revenue? And frankly, even with the example I shared, we would have probably done the same thing again if I'd known what the outcomes were. But going back and looking at it in hindsight, it had a big cost to our business that none of us ever realized and never even anticipated at the time.
Wow, that's a good story. Well, it looks like we're coming up on the hour here. So unless we have any other questions, I think I'll thank you for coming today, Linda. And this has been a eye-opening, and I think I know I've been very impressed with your new worksheet. I hadn't seen that one before, so that's going to be super helpful. I think I encourage everybody to kind of download that and go to Linda's link. And the value builder test is a really good test to kind of gauge where your business is. Take it off, and that way you can kind of see if you're making progress.
Absolutely.
And, is there anything else you'd like to say and add? But again, thank you, Tony.
Once again, thank you guys for having me. I always enjoy spending time, and part of my mission is to pay it forward where I can. So it's always a pleasure and honor to be able to do this for the SBA. So thank you for having me.
Hopefully you'll come back again.
I'm sure I will.
And Linda, I just want you to know that everybody's saying thank you so much. They found your information helpful, and they just said great job and thank you. Well,
awesome. Well, I appreciate that. And once again, you can set up an appointment with me on my website, and I'm more than happy to take 30, 45 minutes and just talk about people's business if you need the help and see what I can do to help you.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for doing that. And thanks for being with us today. And I'd like to thank everybody out there for joining us, and we'll see you next Wednesday at noon.
Awesome. Thanks.